me, willing to give up their will from wherever they came from? What kind of people is that? Go and ask somebody standing on the docks, leaving their country with their baggage, saying, where you going? You got your own traditions, your own music, your own arts and crafts and beliefs and spirituality. Why are you on the boat dock? So if you coming to me, you gave up the will of where the hell you come from. So what kind of a person am I already dealing with? Okay? And I got that mentality coming in by the boats. They all left their homes, willing to give up, sacrifice, whatever it is it takes to go to this new world. Now, what did we do? Stayed at home and received all of this. And then we get blamed or get pushed aside for all of this by ignoring us and ignoring my rights and conditioning those to be them, not us as Hawaiians. And this is 2014. So a couple hundred years this has been going on since the overthrow. Maybe 100, 200 years. So in 200 years, you've eliminated a race of people, got them to sing and dance the way you want them to, and not being sincere about protecting their whole eye root of their spirituality and their whole presence on this earth, man. We just an island people. We're lost in the glitter. If you rode an airplane and watched videos of Hawaii, we're not there just to entertain. We don't call the shots. We don't relate to our resources anymore. And we become a social statistic if you're going against it. The whole PTSD isn't just from people coming from war. What if the war was brought to your house? What if you were told, get in the closet, don't come out till we tell you to, or play the game the way we want you to, then we'll let you play in the house. But right now, we took over your house and you stay in the room until you're ready to come out. And it's exactly how we are. It's this mushroom syndrome. Keep us in the dark and feed us shit. You know, and that's it. We'll survive. And that's the name of it. And the people that's the most conditioned is the people that they put in charge of shit. That's why you can never fix nothing. It's about comfort, 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 comfort. I got a good job, my ass is covered. I don't care. Hawaiian or no Hawaiian. There's so much money put out in the state for Hawaiians to become Westerners. Money's up the ass. Anything about Hawaiian staying Hawaiian? Zero. Not a program, not a nothing. Oh, we're going to teach you to speak Hawaiian. I'll win in court if I spoke Hawaiian. Be less statistics if we all spoke Hawaiian. I mean, Marco spoke Filipino. He couldn't go home. He had to get the hell out of Philippines. How many dialects he speak? Is language going to save my ass? Should we all speak Hawaiian living in an apartment? Talking to each other in a jail cell? That's going to save me because we got talking Hawaiian, we communicated? Bullshit. They've played every damn card, Western card, that you can play in 200 years. There ain't no more cards. And they're getting busted on them. So what? Let's compound the problem and just layer it. Feed crumbs to it. Keep everybody happy. We'll get by 10 years, my time's up, somebody else's headache. It just keeps going on and on and on. Nobody fixes nothing. It's all about entertaining the problem and getting comfortable doing it. And that's how it is in Hawaii. You can run in America, jump on a Greyhound and get the hell out. Where you going over here? Even fishing, we bang into each other's ass because there's no more fish left, so we're down to the last. No place to go already. No fish to catch, only that one left. That's how it's getting. And that's how we're being treated. Hawaiians are being conditioned to be somebody else, and it's working. If America should write a book about planned genocide and colonialism, do it with Hawaii. Because it's exactly how it is. And the stats show that. They can't deal with this because of stats. That ain't my stats, it's their stats. But when you turn around and poke it in their face, they start running, creating something to get rid of that, to cover that, to entertain that, to ignore that. And that gets a lot of attention when you bring it to them. Then of course you get, like I say, how many people playing the game? How many people collecting monies as part of the crumb cover-up? Many. The state create them. Then they go out find people to work them. Then you give them a little bit of money for 4 or 5 years. Stay there. Well, we'll add more of this, we'll add more of that. We can throw in a few more dollars. They don't fix problems, they entertain problems. And in Hawaii, you get comfortable getting paid to entertain problems. I don't know who you talk to in Hawaii. What other groups are doing anything to make a stat difference? I don't know. I joined this group a few years. We went looking all over for who's at the level we talking about. Nobody. You go up to legislature, we're up there betching to change stuff. They get 10 more people come to make it lead the same. I look around, I see any programs in there that's trying to think about Hawaiians going back into prison, Hawaiians going into prison. None. It's all about entertaining them along the process. Helping them make some kind of living for themselves, using the misery as a commodity along the way. This is bullshit, and that's what's been going on in this state for a long time. You think the university is going to do something? No. You think they protect culture and traditions? No. You think they'll figure out 4,000 out of 6,000 prisoners? It's Hawaiians in there, 4,000? Do they think about how come it's so unbalanced? Is there racial profiling with 4,000 out of 6, and yet we're almost 5 as the population? More whites, more Japanese, more Chinese, more Filipinos, and then come Hawaiians, and yet we're 60% in prison?
Brady.
I mean, what more bullshit do you need? How fast do you react to that? We don't. The graph keeps going up, governor to governor to governor. It doesn't go down. Not one program show anything going that way. So they all failed. And when you bring it to their attention, they cover it up, they cover it up, they put different people, they smother you with these group people. They're all happy, they're all getting money, they're fixing. You're fixing what? You got 12 in your program, 20 in your program. We got 4,000 locked up. You're just crumbing and feeling great about helping one out of nobody. Isn't that great? But I don't do nothing if that's the case. We'll feel proud about entertaining and you're only fixing 1 or 2 people. We got 4,000 people. Then you got another 4,000 lined up to go in. What's going on? Why are we doing more time than the other races for the same crime? Why are we doing more time? Why are we going back into prison more than anybody else? Why is our wife and children a statistic because our husbands and all these guys are in prison? We become welfare recipients, or you're raising more prisoners. Is that what the system's doing? That's what we got. That's right in front of your face. Anybody want to address that? No. Why? Nobody's asking you to carry a gun and go to war. How many of you guys did that? And you don't want to stand up for this with a piece of paper and at legislature and yell in the governor's face about fixing shit? What you scared about? You're going to mess with your paycheck?
Losing your comfort.
Man, that's all this place is, full of comfort people. And that's the way it is, man. And that's what's happened. People should write about what has happened to Hawaiians since the first Western contact. Do an impact study and look at the impacts of each migration with the system pushing it. And look at the impacts it's done to Hawaiians. Then maybe we can sit down and I got some substance to show you abuse, neglect, genocide. We got a study? No, we just got stats that show screw up. Ain't nothing fixing nothing. Nobody fix shit. And they can't answer. They're just trying to shut you up. If they had about 20 of me speaking, they got a problem. But if you only got a little handful, we can shut them down.
So I can say that that there's been several, probably lots of studies done. It's been a big subject in anthropology about what's happened here. I think so sadly, that's not any kind of solution. The statistics exist, and the narrative that explain the statistics exist. Just like it does for what happened in Iraq when the U.S. invaded from government lies, invaded from government lies. Just like we know what's happened to the Native Americans, just like we know what's currently happening to African Americans. It's known. We just don't care. So we're all grown-ups here, right?
That's right.
I think we can admit it, that that's simply the way it is. We don't care as a country. Just don't. So when I talk about, well, and so I've become comfortable too. Like you heard me say, my political involvement sometimes is more and sometimes is less. I have a job. I have a nice girlfriend. I have 2 children. I live near the ocean. I'm getting older. I get comfortable. So no longer am I willing, I've discovered that no longer am I willing to protest a lot because it makes me uncomfortable and I don't want to do that. And so I'm sitting there thinking, what works for me? The person who I want to be at home with my kids. When I'm involved in political fights and struggles and I come home to my kids, I'm not smiling. I'm still angry. And I thought, I can't do that. So what can I do? And I've been moving slowly over the years to restorative justice. When I first heard of restorative justice, the people who were pushing it were white, Republican, born-again Christians. And these were people I have no interest in associating with. No interest at all. I consider them the enemy from my position. I am a convict. And out of prison, I'm a formerly incarcerated person who's working for the dignity and full civil rights of my people. Those guys, the white, male, born-again people, are the enemy from my position. So I wanted nothing to do with them or their restorative justice. But some of my colleagues who are a little bit smarter politically said, hey, we've got some things in common with those guys. Like they want to look for alternatives to incarceration. And they're believing in giving people a second chance. I said, I don't care. I still don't have the patience to put up with the way that they look at the world. So that's, 20 years ago. Over time, what restorative justice means has changed a lot. It's no longer just a conversation with white, middle-class, born-again people. It's now very much involving minority communities and drawing upon the traditions of indigenous people. And so as what restorative justice means has shifted, and as I have shifted, becoming older, more comfortable, more involved with my family and all of that, we have met somewhere. And so now I am often finding it useful to use the lens of restorative justice to deal with these problems that we're talking about. Whether it's the little problem of prisoner reentry, which is crumbs, complete crumbs, right? Another program invented by the state to keep the people down. There's no question about that. In the beginning, like I was there when reentry was invented. Joan Peter Celia and Jeremy Travis are the 2 people who invented it. I was a student of Joan Peter Celia at UC Irvine in California. And then I worked with Jeremy Travis, who's now almost my friend, as the president of John Jay College in New York City. I didn't like either one of these people, but I was there at the beginning, and there was all this talk about reentry could make things different. I never believed it for a moment because I'm a convict. And these are white, middle-class, professional people telling us that they can lead the way. And our whole ideology is we need to lead the way. Those guys can't lead the way. They brought us into the problem. They're not going to take us out of the problem. Our own empowerment is the only thing that we have to rely on to take our things out of the problem. No one can save us but ourselves. But over time, reentry has encouraged many people, such as ourselves, to become more involved, more connected in criminal justice system processes, having more of a voice. Not much of a voice, but it went from having no voice. I mean, if I told you the story of my case, how I got arrested, how it went through the courts and all that, we all just cry about the injustice of it all, the lies, the deceit, right? So I mean, we've never had a voice, but with reentry, now we do have a little bit of a voice. And then with restorative justice, merging with reentry as another powerful criminal justice issue in America, it gives us even more of a voice without us even having to push too hard. Because simply by its form, restorative justice is a circle. And so everyone in the circle has a voice. Restorative justice as an ideal explores the causes and conditions that give rise to crime. And so if you've got people at the circle who care and who have some capacity to contribute to change, either as advocates or decision makers or something, then the exploration can be about the causes and conditions that gave rise to the crime. And so it's not so much of an intervention in the life of an individual as it is an investigation into the life of a community or of a society. And then the question is, what can we do? Not what do you need to do to make it up to him for what you've done. That's just a small part of it, which society is happy to stop right there and not do anything more, right? But the principle of restorative justice is so much more. That is, what can we do as a community to create conditions where this sort of thing or wrongdoing will happen less. And so when you have an offender who sits there and says, how can you be making such a big deal, right? I'm Native Hawaiian. How can you make a big deal out of me stealing the car of this haole when the haoles have stolen our entire nation, right? When this sort of thing is being said and it's being looked into, now you have a conversation. You have a conversation you can ask, well, why does he think this way? What reality is there that supports this understanding that this young man is walking around with inside of his head and in his heart? What can be done to bring some making amends for him and people like him, as well as making amends to the haole whose car was stolen, right? Not one or the other, but the yes and, right? How do we meet these immediate needs as well as the underlying need? How do we do that? So is this, I mean, you know, please, I am not suggesting, oh, this is the cure for everything and everything's going to be fine. It's not, right? It's not. There's almost no hope of making things better through the restorative justice approach. But there is absolutely no hope in using the other approaches. The other approaches, banging on things, has been tried by so many of my heroes forever. And as you're saying, I don't see anything getting better. My heroes from the academic world, including John Irwin, ex-convict professor who was my role model to go do prison time, get out, become a professor, and work as an activist for social change, and work within criminology to try to educate criminologists about what things are really like rather than what they think it is from their offices. I'm in his office, he's got books and articles all over his walls, things that he's written and people he supported have written. And his career went from 1970, his first book, until he died maybe 3 years ago as a happy, comfortable old man living on the beach in Southern California. What happened in the world of criminal justice that he was looking to transform from 1970 to 2010? The era of mass incarceration happened, right? The worst thing that has ever happened in the history of the United States as far as criminal justice. So there's no question that being an academic criminologist doesn't necessarily have anything to change what it is now. So what about, we can look at our heroes who've been elected to political office, or our heroes who have lifted up through the religious realms or the activist realms. Hold up whatever group that you want, or whatever heroes that you want. Nothing got better in these last 40 years. from all the work of these guys. Everything just got worse. So I'm the last person who's going to tell you that things are going to get better, because there's no proof. There's no evidence. There's no suggestion that things can get better. But something that I know, and now I'm kind of like a 12-step person or like a religious person, it's something that I know is from my own experience, that when I'm sitting in a circle with people and we come voluntarily and we choose to subscribe to a similar intention, that we're trying to make things better, and we're willing to be informed by the natural world, and we're willing to sit and listen to one another and show respect for each other's understandings. When we have those agreements, that we come together, then I find myself much more at peace, and so much more capable of contributing to change. And so my life has been, I think, enriched tremendously. I wasn't born sitting in circles and talking like this. I've carried a gun, right, for many years in my life. I was much more comfortable with arguing or with fighting than I am with sitting and listening and talking like the women. It's not how I was raised. But as I'm saying, I found out in my experience something new. That sitting in this way, drawing on the wisdom of indigenous peoples from New Zealand and Australia and Hawaii and North America and all over the world, because the more you study restorative justice and circle processes, the more you find out that virtually every indigenous group around the world has been using this process, the more I allow myself to be informed by this stuff and feeling my own heart and my own experience by following this form, then the more peaceful I feel, and the better I am at home with my kids, and the more able I am to be in dialogue with corrections officials. I couldn't even be in the same room with these motherfuckers. Just the way they walk, just the tone of their voice. Right? It triggered me, right? PTSD just triggered me. I could not stand it. Now I can. Right? Part of it is the passage of time and maturity and mellowing from being out of prison long, and part is the support of the container of sitting in a circle with people who are agreeing to be equal and to share in some aspiration. And so I hope you can see that currently, and I'm hoping this lasts a while, I'm very encouraged by the possibilities for us as agents of transformation, right? Like listening to you, we're not talking about piecemeal change, right? I was working all the time with people from New York and people from Washington, D.C. on prisoner reentry and criminal justice system reform. My voice at all the meetings was, I don't give a fuck about reform. This piecemeal bullshit that you're talking about, I mean, the program that's called Unsuccessful, trying to change 100 people, it changes 20. The program that's very successful, trying to change 100 people, it changes 30. I don't care about the difference between 20 and 30. Don't care. What about the whole 100 or the 100,000 or the million, right? So I've met many wonderful people involved in this work. I've criticized them relentlessly over the years for their piecemeal approach. And still, I'm happy to join with them in a circle and listen to their approach. And then at the end of the day, you know, like now, I look back and ask, how effective has my work been, right? What has been the results of my work of the last 20 years? And how does it compare to the results of the work of these people who I've criticized so much? And I have to say that I think they have been more successful than I have. I have been somewhat successful in my own life and in my own heart, with my children, perhaps with some of my students, although not very successful with others of my students. But the Ban the Box campaign, I did not come up with that. Justice reinvestment, I was one of the people who helped discuss the possibility of making that happen. It was not first my idea, it was others. And then I thought, oh, it probably won't work. I dropped out to do other things. As you see, it is now a nationwide piece of legislation. And it isn't the way we wanted it to be, but it's something. California had 172,000 people locked up. People sued the state. They asked that overcrowding be dropped down. What has happened is now prisoners are being shifted from state prisons to county jails. And so it's not as if the prisons are just emptying out and letting people go. But the numbers of people that are locked up is dropping. And people who are being held, instead of being held in the massive state prison warehouses, more and more they're being held closer to home in the county. And perhaps that is an improvement. So instead of criticizing and fighting against people who are just interested in reform and piecemeal approaches, now I try to calm down and breathe and notice how nature doesn't change so fast either, that you have to crawl before you can walk, before you can run. And I try to join with those who are moderate and going for a more slower paced reform.
I can see what you're talking about, and you really have a continent mentality, because all what you're saying is all more or less dealt in a big city, in the county, or the states. I'm an island here, and we separated islands, so we got smaller from this whole concept of Oahu being the central. And I'm a native person, so I have a more of an urgency, and because if it's living on an island, it's 20 times more impacted than a continent would be in anything. It's just that small and that immediate. So talking about all these things and all these people and all that, and dealing in the trenches for the last maybe 30 years, I don't see any of that shit trickling down to help me. None. I just see everything just multiplying, and a population is multiplying, and we're becoming lesser and lesser of who we are. There's urgency. I mean, if you think it's a ointment situation or 911, well, that's your conditioning. I think it's a tourniquet for a Native Hawaiian right now. It's that severe, especially when you look at statistics and the way the baby boom is. We're being eliminated off this earth faster than any other race, especially in this state, in the world, because there's no extra Hawaiians. So, you know, maybe your experience with Australia and all these other places that you talk about are big places. They're not little Hilo or little island of Hawaii where every island has different treatment of how the police treat everybody. Every island has different stats about the population in each island and which one's doing more time for lesser crimes, and for petty crimes still doing more time, where the commodity for a person going to jail for 1 year is 40 grand. He steals a $10,000 car, he'll get 5 years. That's $200,000 for 10,000. That's what's going on here. And the Hawaiian is the one that's really suffering as the leading statistic in these kind of bullshit. So it's an urgency here, you know, and for Hawaiians who used to live on the beach and had okay families, they're now in a dire straits and they don't live on the beach no more. There's more people living on the beach that's non-Hawaiians than Hawaiians. And you know, that's where they would rather be. And when they're homeless in these islands, they go down to the beach, you know, more than hang around in the city. They're out in the tarps and the bushes. You don't see them. There's a lot of them. Where do they go? What do they do? So in the glitter of all that you see and stuff, there's a lot of bullshit underneath it. And there's urgency to it. So that's the way I look at it, man. And great about what you've done or what people have done and all that shit, but it didn't help me. I don't see shit helping me, you know. And what experience you have with American Indians, I didn't hear it. And I know they get to take care of themselves and they got monies to do it, and hopefully they do, and what little they got given back to them. We ain't got shit, man. We've got senators and governors of Hawaiian ancestry. That's part of the biggest problem because of that. You got the same thing, but Hawaiians taking the lead for developers who stand against the wall and watch us fight each other about you and me and you and me, and they get paid. The paid guy stands there. If he steps in the picture, there's a racism card. So I'll step back, pay the Hawaiian. There's no racism because it's Hawaiian on Hawaiian. And that's bullshit that's going on. So I just still gonna hang with my urgency, my attitude. I've been fighting Hawaiian issues, from feds bombing islands, bombing barrels, bombing our sites, bombing my traditions, to developers doing it, not just military, digging up our bones. Today they still dig them up for development. Like we don't exist. You know, I mean, you can say a dinosaur is ancient. They call us ancient bones. What? Yeah, I'm still here. What's ancient about it? When does ancient draw a line that's Hawaiian and this is new Hawaiian? I mean, what? This is old dinosaur, this new dinosaur? Man, it never broke. It never had a gap. It never had a space, or the links weren't cut where you could stick your thing in it. And now it's become something different. And that's how it is. Nobody writes about it. Nobody cares.
Anthropologists do.
Yeah?
Yeah, but the second part, but nobody cares, and not too many people.
Well, where do they take it? Where do anthropologists take it? I mean, how long they been studying Egypt? How long they been studying Indians? How long? Well, where is it taking the Indian? Where is it taking Egyptian? What do I do? Just get in line with them? Because anthropologists? I mean, this is Western attitude that's supposed to be dominant. I don't care what it is. I'm from here. I know this. I know that. You're from there. I'll tell you. That's how it's been for 200 years for Hawaiians.
So there's something I think is good news in this, and that is that people with the Western attitudes, us Westerners, I think, increasingly are finding ourselves sick in the soul, sick in the heart.
Should be.
There's a lot of people who
Because
think...
you've killed the souls of all the people already, so getting a little bit back from the damage is nothing. The damage is still there, people living with the damage. So to give you back or give people back when I talk, a little bit of a irk in their feelings. Wow, I've been living with that for 200 years or so, since the beginning. So why don't you wear some? Why don't you feel some? Why don't you get your attitude or your appetite ruined by what I say and how I feel, when that's what I was born into, whether I liked it or not. And you get to fly over and feel it if you want, or don't feel it if you want.
Exactly.
You know, I gotta stay here. No matter where you go or wherever everybody else goes, I gotta live with the problem. And the way it sounds and the way you should be listening is that it's really our problem. Ain't nobody gonna help us but ourselves.
That's the way it is. And as part of my story is that I'm white. I'm white, middle class, male. I have the choice
To be president.
of being political or not. Dorsey Nunn is African American. He and the core group up there in the Bay Area, you know, cousins, uncles, grandparents, children of theirs, all threatened by the criminal justice system, all being locked up and having spent time, right? All being documented. That's not the way it is with my family. And so I have the luxury of, when my consciousness is high, I can get all involved in politics. And when I want to go on vacation or have some other reason, have my consciousness be low, I can do that because I'm blending in and supported by the dominant society. And so I'm aware of that. And yes, we do have different perspectives in that. That when I feel desperate about things aren't going to change, I can step back and take the continental viewpoint and look at the long road and think that yes, every journey begins with the first step, but we'll be there somewhere. I can take comfort in those kinds of ideas where I understand you're on an island and it's your people who have been subject to genocide and continue to be. And so I acknowledge the different of perspectives, and I think that this is what happens when people come together and listen to each other. Don't interrupt each other. Don't sit there and think about the next thing they're going to say while somebody else is talking, but instead simply listen to the other person about what's being said and what's not being said, and focus yourself on having some connection. Let compassion and understanding arise. Mm-hmm. That creates the potential to make some kind of change. So one thing that you have that's an advantage here is people really, well, it's considered paradise. People like Hawaii. People want to come. People want to be entertained by the local culture. So how can that be used as an opportunity to educate people about these issues that we're speaking of? 30 years ago, there was no such thing as ecotourism, right, for example. There was no such thing, or maybe it was just in its infancy. Now, we're living in a time of vast wealth inequality, right? So there's a relatively few people who have tremendous wealth, and they're always looking for something new to do. New things to do with their time, new things to do with their resources, things that they would find interesting. So in South Central Los Angeles, 10, 15 years ago, some of the people started thinking ghetto tourism. People are bypassing us and going to Hollywood and what have you and spending their money, but they buy rap music and they go watch movies about the Crips and the Bloods, but all that stuff isn't ours. All that stuff is made up by other people. What if we market ourselves and bring them in here? And some people say, yeah, we can do that, right? We can show off, give them a good time, entertain them, and they can go away. And other people say, well, we can do more than that. We can educate them. They want to know about what it's like to be from Compton. We can show them, and we can try to have a meeting of the hearts when they come together. So this, of course, is very difficult, and it hasn't worked out very well, but it's something that the times support it in a way, because rap music, movies, people had some interest in the ghetto. Mm-hmm. And so if you were from the ghetto and you had the consciousness that you could meet with respect with people from the outside, then you could create some possibility there. And so some people have, and there have been a lot of changes and a lot of consciousness raising where before there hasn't. The problems are still incredible over there, but there has been some change. So I think the same kind of potential, and I'm sorry that to the extent that my thinking shifts into a problem-solving kind of mode, right? Like I hear some of what you're saying, part of me simply listens and bears witness to the centuries-long tragedy that is ongoing that you're describing, and I simply witness it with compassion. And there's another part of me that's a problem solver. And so I apologize that comes out as it is right now, because I don't pretend that I know any solution to this centuries-long problem.
Yeah, I'm just commenting that your solutions come from a conditioning. I mean, that's obvious, And the thing I see is different between the blacks and Hawaiians is that you snatched them from their house. America snatched them from where they lived and brought them over. I mean, this is different. You walked into the house here, the Western man, and just took over the house with us in it. There's a difference between that. They don't know where to go back to Africa from where they were stolen from. There's this whole problem of never going back because of that. They don't have any identification of where they come from. But here, you know where I come from. You're in my house. You didn't bring me from nowhere. You're treating me like you own me. You own me. And that's a disgusting feeling that you're owned by another race in your own house. So there's a different attitude that is never written about, nobody talks about, and it ain't the same as the blacks. The treatment may be, but the history on how we fix it is not going to be the same. A black guy has to forget his traditions and become a Westerner because he's forced to, in the way his history shows it. A Hawaiian, no. They just shove it down your throat, lock you up, or take over your place, and you're forced to do it that way. In a different way about, I am forced to be different in my own house. They're forced to be different because they took them out of their house. There's a difference here. But the treatment is almost the same. Anything lesser gets treated that way. So I don't know what conditioning or what universities and what you know at your university. We don't even have it here at our university. And just that conditioning thing I'm talking about is valid because you don't have anything to talk about solving Hawaiian problems. You just have to solve the big umbrella thing. And umbrella stuff is just hiding underneath shit. You know what I mean? You're just hiding underneath the real thing, man. That's why we make umbrellas, because you can't deal with the real thing.
So I think in fairness, what I've been talking about is two things. The umbrella stuff and the individual human being heart stuff. So when I'm talking about sitting around tables creating justice reinvestment or creating prisoner reentry or creating all of us or none, certainly all of that stuff is the big overarching criminal justice policy umbrella stuff. When I tell you about coming here and sitting with my mentor, Jack Zimmerman, that's nothing about any umbrella. We're informed by the larger discussions, but what we're doing is working on heart connections among individuals. And anyone who's willing to come and sit in the circle and share these aspirations of speaking from the heart and listening from the heart, anyone is welcome to come and join. And what happens there is a being seen and a being heard as an individual and as a representative of whatever your people may be, whatever your people's experience may be. And that, I find, is tremendously affecting in that it gives me peace and it also makes me more effective in my work. My work speaking to people who I'm ordinarily at odds with, and then also being creative for the big umbrella policy sorts of things. And so I've never been interested in being just at the umbrella stage, and I've never been satisfied with just being at the human heart individual level. And so I do both. The stuff in between is really the very difficult mechanics of implementation, right, of policy implementation, of going out from experience and scaling it, or taking an umbrella policy and actually making it work, right, implementing it, going down. Those two levels like that has not been my area of implementation. And sometimes I criticize them because that's somewhat part of the piecemeal approach that I was speaking about earlier. But those are, I would call the three basic pieces of this type of work, and I appreciate the criticism about flying at 30,000 feet and looking down, and also remind you about what I'm talking about why I'm here, you know, what keeps bringing me back here, and the work that's closest to me and means the most to me and my family, and that is this work of speaking and listening in a circle.
Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt, but at some point, because you got a flight today, you got to go back to Kona. So we have a limited amount of time this morning. I have a couple more places to go. So yeah, I don't know what your itinerary is as far as time-wise with your girlfriend and where you got to go and get her. And
Yeah, just she's close by, so nothing different than what we talked about yesterday.
Okay,
Was
okay.
to leave here.
Well, I have to go get ready for our board meeting, and if you can just join us over there at Workforce Development. I can give you other GPS stuff for that. It's 1990 Kinoli, which is right the street right down here, but it's the light. It's another light down.
I can take him
Like-
over.
Oh, he has his car, so.
Yeah.
But he gotta go. You gotta go pick her up too, yeah. And then I know you have to leave by 11 to go back to Kona, because you gotta be at the airport by 1.
Yeah, so I figured I'd go to the meeting with you, maybe from 10 to 11, like that,
Yeah.
around there,
Yeah.
and then leave and go pick up my girlfriend.
Oh, okay,
over
okay.
there.
You can do that. So you have some more time here then, because it's right down the street. But I gotta leave to go get set for the meeting. So,
Yeah.
you know, Mike.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you know where the meeting is over there?
I know.
Yeah, we're
I'll take him
yeah.
now. Yeah.